Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Oh, yeah. Live around the world on the internet at MichaelDukesShow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station, and or FM translator. Good morning, my friends. It is Hump Day, Wednesday, middle of the week. Downhill slide usually to Firearms Friday, but this morning, hey, Firearms Friday is actually Firearms Thursday. And so we're going to be doing firearm stuff tomorrow. Just a quick reminder that I will be off on vacation on Friday and on Monday. Monday, of course, is Memorial Day. I mean, who wants to hear me talk about stuff on Memorial Day? I certainly don't. And so we're going to do that. We'll be off on Monday, and we will be we'll be off on Friday as well for that beautiful, beautiful 4-day weekend. So it'll be exciting. It'll be exciting. But you'll have alternate programming depending on where you are and where you're listening to, which radio station and or FM translator you're listening on. Doug Steffens' Good Day, I think, and then maybe Mike Gallagher. I'm not sure what the alternate programming is, but it'll be good. Maybe it just won't be quite as good as me. Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. So that's again Friday and Monday. I will be off. Tomorrow we have Jacob Sullum from Reason Magazine coming on board to talk about this latest piece in the New York Times, talking about how looser gun laws are really the problem. Looser gun laws are going to be the issue of, when we know that's really not what's going on. Anyway, we'll talk to Jacob Sullum about that, and we'll get that done tomorrow. We're not going to have Willie this week, which is going to be weird. But we may have some of that today because I've got one news story talking about some of the most anticipated movies of the summer. We'll talk about that as well. Before we get into today's stuff, I want to remind you that the Alaska radio auction is still going on. You can find it on the web at alaskaradioauction.com, and you'll find all kinds of stuff. I just was pulling up alaskaradioauction.com real quick. Some of the big ticket items that are up for sale include a brand new Hughescraft 20-foot boat with trailer and motor in Fairbanks. Current bid on this, it's almost a $40,000 item right now. Current bid is $14,000, roughly $14,000, $13,000 and change. There's another boat. There's a Marlin skiff down at Dewey's Cook Inlet in Anchorage. That current bid for that $11,000 package is $3,700. We got there's a trailer. There's a side-by-side. There's a dirt bike. There's a wood stove. Those are all the big ticket items. There's a whole bunch of big ticket items up and available right now. and also some auto starts, etc. Plus, there's a whole bunch of buy it now items. I mean, if you like restaurants, what do we got left in the restaurants category? In Palmer, AK's Best Phillies. In Wasilla, Larson's Pizza Joint. In Fairbanks, we've got the Roundup Steakhouse. In Anchorage, we've got Sis's Cafe and Northern Wings. Pita Pit in both Fairbanks and Anchorage. Meta and Rose in Wasilla. That's just the restaurants. And then we've got lodging from Bear Creek Winery, the Aviator Hotel, some KOA lodging in Seward and in Palmer and in Homer, Ocean Shores Hotel down in Homer as well. One of my favorite places to stay, the Ocean Shores Hotel. There's a bunch of stuff on there. So if you're planning on doing anything this summer, recreationally or travel or going to restaurants or whatever, you just can't miss it. Go out there and check it out right now. AlaskaRadioAuction.com. All right. I've gone through it all. AlaskaRadioAuction.com. Okay. It's time to get into today. What do we got going on today? Well, there's no guests. Mike Shower, he's working and had to travel this morning. I talked to him yesterday. Got the word from the bird yesterday that he is instead, he's doing some work and had to travel and et cetera, et cetera. Can't make it this morning. He's going to be joining us next week. He said he was going to be available tomorrow, but I've already got stuff planned for Firearms Thursday. So we'll be talking with him next week about the whole laydown of what's going on. And I reached out to a couple of other legislators just to kind of get some post-session, kind of recap and things like that. But it turns out that after they leave the legislature, they got a lot of stuff to get caught up on. Everyone that I talked to was like, one couple were sick, one was busy, one was like, my wife will kill me because we're getting ready to go on a trip. And it was just, I understand. I mean, they've been trapped down in Juneau for, 122 days. And so I understand. So it's just you and me this morning. And we're going to cover a bunch of different stories. And we're just going to let the winds take us where they may. And I have decided I'm going to turn the phone lines on as well. And we'll get your thoughts on whatever else that you want to talk about. There you go. 319-527-3864. 319-527-3864. If you want to join the conversation this morning and talk about everything. I definitely want to talk about the long trail. I want to talk about this latest piece from David Boyle, who's an education advocate. He's written. He's also the education writer for Must Read Alaska, and he's got a new article up talking about the real reason for the attack on homeschooling. And maybe David will call in this morning and we could talk to him about that article as well. Maybe spend a segment or two on that because it's a good piece. And I think it kind of delineates and lines out what we're facing and what folks who have been homeschooling can kind of, what they can understand, what they should understand about the situation and everything else. We've got the discussion on the homeschooling arguments going before the Supreme Court. We've got a discussion about the long trail. Now, I know I've talked about this in the past, but I'm going to come back to this because, again, I'm just so put off by people who think that millions of dollars should be expended on a trail that may be used in part by a dozen people or something when it's all said and done from start to finish. I know people may use portions of the trails, and I guess I have a question about all of this stuff, and specifically the fact that the federal government may be involved, and that could lead to other problems, including what some have talked about, the bifurcation of the state by this trail and the fact that legally you're not supposed to use ATVs or motorized vehicles over it and everything else. I mean, we've already got enough issues going on. So we'll talk about the long trail as well. Oh, I've got some good news. On top of that, three good news stories that I think would be, good to talk about. But before we get started on any of that, I guess we can check in to see what's going on down in Anchorage, because the jig is up. The jig is up in Anchorage. Yesterday, Suzanne LaFrance, the former Assembly chairwoman, has now declared victory in the race over incumbent Dave Bronson. With the latest results released on Tuesday evening, the Division of Elections with the latest dump of ballot data shows that LaFrance is leading by 5,600 votes. So that's with a 53% of the total vote margin. So 53 to 47. LaFrance, her campaign team claimed the number of ballots still left to be counted are less than her lead of 5,600 votes, making it mathematically impossible for Bronson to make up the deficit. The division has counted 79,368 votes so far. That's a 33% voter turnout, which not bad, not shabby, not too shabby. It is what it is. It means the headline reads, LaFrance declares victory, vows to, quote, clean up the mess at City Hall, unquote. So apparently there's a whole lot of mess. And she's talking about a staffing crisis, meaning they're going to hire more government employees. They're going to hire more police. They're going to do more to address the homelessness. They're all, I mean, they're going to, I don't know. I just know that it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see what this is like like I said before, I think late last week or earlier this week. I think it's going to be interesting to see what this place looks like in 5 years. What does it look like with a very progressive assembly and a very progressive mayor? What kind of fresh hell is going to be unleashed on the property taxpayers and the landowners there in the state? It should be it should be an interesting thought experiment played out in real life. So we'll see where it goes, but that's the beginning of the story for what's happening in Anchorage. The second thing that I wanted to touch base on was the school board meeting last night. The school board meeting in Anchorage was mobbed by a group of parents who are there to show their frustration about the changing school start times. Apparently, the Anchorage School District has planned to start the school days later than current start times for some students and earlier for others in the upcoming school year this August. Elementary school students will begin classes at 8 a.m. High school students will begin classes at 8:45, and middle schoolers will begin school at 9:30 a.m. Some of these start times are more than an hour later than where they were currently. And some of the parents are not okay with this. One lady's quoted as saying, it's affecting people's jobs. It's affecting people's businesses. It's affecting our kids' extracurriculars. I mean, the list goes on and on. Now, apparently, according to the school board president, Andy Holman, he said the school board approved the time change more than a year ago to give everybody time to adjust to it. But it seems that some people are just finding out about it and reacting now. Well, maybe you should have taken out an ad in the radio to let people know that start times were changing or whatever. But this is what kills me. The schools district has said that the time change will optimize the academic achievement and growth, which Holloman echoed. He said, the studies show that if you let teenagers sleep later in the morning, a number of good things happen. They arrive at school more often and more safely and more awake. And that was the impetus behind all that. The impetus behind starting later was to allow teenagers to sleep in. That's what the... I mean, your kid's got to get to school at 9:30. You've already been at work for, an hour and a half. What's going on? What's happening there? Oh man, this thing is just a hot mess. I am just so glad that I don't have any kids in any kind of schooling anymore. All my kids are graduated. Maybe they should have taken an ad out on the radio to do that. Maybe that would have made sense. But hey, they're letting them teenagers sleep in. It's going to be just fantastic. Don't worry about it. All right. Well, I see we got a call on hold, and I believe it's our friend David Boyle, but we'll see what happens during the break. If so, we're going to talk about his latest article in Must Read Alaska. The real reason the NEA attacked the homeschool families in Alaska was union power and control. We'll have discussions about this in just a moment. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. We can turn with more right after this.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, we're in the break. First things first, I'm going to get to the phones here in just a hot second. Somebody asked, where is Brian? And Brian says, good morning from the gulag to my friends in Facebook land. He's on YouTube. Brian is stuck on YouTube. He got dinged yesterday. He got banned for 2 days for a post from 10 years ago. Outlaw Thoughts is headed to the National Convention for the Libertarian Convention in Washington, D.C. later today. Good luck, my friend. Good luck. I've been watching some of the things that are going on. That's going to be an interesting thing. Probably going to be an interesting thing. All right. Ron Gillum talking about the long trail, somewhere in the neighborhood of $18 million plus for the long trail. We just can't find anywhere to cut. That's the comment from they've already put up $9 million for the long trail. $9 million is what they put up already. Has already been allocated in state funding. That has nothing to do with the federal funding. Including $3.1 million this year alone. Good morning. Chris says, ad on the radio. That's a good one. That was my point. But, the Matsu had late start Mondays for over a year. The kids missed 3 weeks of school because they started 1 hour later on Monday. Yeah, well, there you go. Let's see. Good morning. All right, I'm all caught up. Let me go over to the phones. I believe, fingers crossed, that this is our friend David Boyle. I'm thinking that might be the case. Good morning.
Good morning, Michael. I don't know if it's your friend David Boyle, but it is David Boyle.
Well, good morning, David. Are you all ready for discussion, or do you want a video link, or what do you want? You want to just do it on the phone? What's easiest for you?
Yeah, let's just do it on the phone, Michael. I'm still in my pajamas.
Well, see, I am too. You just can't see him from the waist down. It's fine. All right.
Oh,
Well,
that's a blessing.
I know exactly. Let me just turn the camera. All right. Well, hold on a second, David. We'll get started with you here in just a minute. I'm going to have to get you all kind of set up here for the phone conversation. So don't go anywhere. I'll put you back on hold and we'll get right back to you. David Boyle, our guest here on the program here in just a hot second. So let me fix this. What do I got? Let me go over here. I'll do that right there. Okay. I'm going to, and then I'll make this David Boyle, education advocate. Okay. And now we got to get the image. We got to try and make it semi-professional, right? I mean, there it was. It was right there. We got to try and make it semi-professional. We're trying to impress the straight people out there. Let's get this all squared away. Let me do that right there. I'll just narrow it down a little bit. Okay. All right. I think I got it. Oof. Okay. Well, that's weird, isn't it? Okay. I think I got it. All right. No, wrong one. This one. Yes, this one. Okay. All right. Let me, just stretching the things out here, folks, just making them look a little bit better. You folks on the podcast are hating me right now, but all right. I think I got it all done. All right. So we're going to pull all this down and then we're going to push this up over here like this and start throwing some shade. Let's get things going on here. David Boyle is going to be our guest, Must Read Alaska. That's coming up here in just a second. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, do all that stuff. Let's get to it. Don't forget, again, sharing where you're at is a good thing to do. That's it. Time to go. Let's get it on.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
Okay, welcome back to the program. The Michael Duke Show continues. This morning, we're getting ready to jump on board and discuss a brand new article in Must Read Alaska. And from David Boyle, who is one of their education writers. He's an education advocate. He's been a guest on the program several times. And he has been following education issues in a semi-professional. He did work for the Alaska Policy Forum on education and everything else, and he's just been an all-around education advocate for many years. His latest article in Must Read, published yesterday, reads, "The real reason NEA attacked homeschool families in Alaska was union power and control." Now, I can already hear the bristling from some people. I just can't. It was for the children. Constitutional. I can hear it all right now. But we're going to get the word straight from the horse's mouth. David Boyle joins us this morning to discuss it and kind of give us the rundown start to finish. Good morning, David. How are you?
Hey, good morning, Michael. I'm calling from Denver this morning.
Well, I'm so sorry for you. I'm just so sorry that you're down in Denver. I mean, you could be in God's country up here, but you're stuck down in blue CO. All right. Well, David, let's get started here on this piece. We start talking about the lawsuits to begin with, and this lawsuit was filed against the state by the NEA Alaska. But what was really in the crosshair here was not necessarily the state, but homeschooling parents. They were the ones that were really and homeschoolers themselves, they were the ones that were really in the crosshairs here, not necessarily the state per se.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Michael. It's interesting that you look at the lawsuit that the teachers union filed, and they kind of hid behind three of the plaintiffs who were actually teachers as well. And they filed a lawsuit, and the basis of it was that some parents were violating the Alaska Constitution by using their allotment money that they got from the school districts to purchase courses and materials from either private or religious institutions. And so they violated a part of the Alaska Constitution, which most of your listeners are probably familiar with. But the thing about it was, the parents themselves are not responsible for the final vetting and authorizing of the payments to those private and or, let's say, religious institutions.
Right.
The correspondence schools are, let's say, IDEA, Raven, and the Anchorage School District and the Mat-Su District. They all have correspondence programs. They're the final arbiters of whether or not a payment should be made.
Well,
Can
I say something real quick, David? Because I was, my family was with IDEA from the very beginning. My oldest daughter was in the first 20 kids that IDEA ever took on, right? So, I mean, we're one of the charter members of IDEA. Never in my life did I ever expect, they always told us, well, here's what you can spend money on. Here's what you can't spend money on. I wanted to get something one time from, I can't remember who it was, some organization. I remember it was a math program or something that I wanted to get, but because the name of the institution was a religious institution, they said, well, you can buy it, but you just won't get reimbursed for it. I mean, they gave us pretty clear guidelines on all this stuff from IDEA for years. And so I never had this problem all throughout all 5 kids. And so you're right. It's a few. The parents really didn't just say, oh, I'm going to do it. You've got to pay me now. It was always up to the school systems, to the correspondence systems to say yes or no on this. And so I was a little shocked. And when Taylor's wife, Trig Taylor's wife, and I can't remember her first name, Jody Taylor, when she came up and started advocating to spend this on private school, I thought, that's is going to cause some problems. That's dangerous because that's not what I've been told for years. And lo and behold, here we are. So again, it's not the parents per se. The parents are following the guidelines of the districts or of the correspondence programs. And I mean, I know IDEA wasn't doing this. So who was,
Well, that's a very interesting question, Michael. I don't know who was doing that, but like I said, it wasn't the parents' responsibility to authorize the payment for, let's say, religious courses. It was the correspondence schools themselves. And I have a very good friend that works for IDEA, and she told me over the years they've always watched that and never reimbursed for payment for religious schooling. The other interesting question is, why did it take the NEA, the teachers union, 10 years to file this suit? Because that law, as you know, was put into place in 2014. And I think what they saw was the fact that the brick and mortar schools, it doesn't look good for them regarding student counts, population. They have very low birth rates going on. We have people leaving the state and taking their children with them. And finally, we have people that have removed their children from the brick and mortar schools and put them in programs like IDEA, Raven, Cyberlinks, Mat-Su Central, et cetera. The homeschool correspondence programs. And by the way, homeschool to me is, I know there are independent homeschoolers out there, but this doesn't apply to them per se. Homeschool and correspondence schools are analogous, the same. So back in 2019, I think I put in my article, we had like 14,000 students in the homeschool program.
Right.
And since then, 2019, we're well over 22,000 homeschool students.
Yeah, it was a 30%.
That's 17% of the total student population in the state of Alaska. And they see that more parents are going to pull their kids out of schools.
Yeah, no, this 30% increase was staggering, right? I mean, it was a 30% increase in homeschooling. Now, of course, you can thank COVID for a lot of that because people got a chance to peek behind the screen and see what it was like in a school on a day-to-day basis remotely. And they also discovered, since they were forced to do that before the school districts got their poop in a group and, figured out some kind of distance learning or something, a lot of parents were forced to go, and they discovered that it wasn't nearly as bad as they were told. I mean, David, I don't know about you, but people are like, I tell people that we homeschooled our kids and they're like, oh, we could never do that. It's so much work. It's so much this. It's so hard. They had bought the lie that the NEA and others and the school districts themselves had been perpetrating, that homeschooling was this onerous 10-hour-a-day process that you couldn't possibly do it all on your own. You couldn't possibly figure it out. And when they were forced to do it by COVID, because many of the school districts shut down and for weeks and sometimes months had no alternative to the in-person learning, many people jumped on these systems. And I mean, it was actually even higher than the 22,000 students to begin with, because that has settled back down a year after people were in IDEA or in some other program for a year, maybe two, and then they went back to brick and mortar schools. But they brought this on themselves.
You're exactly right, and it's kind of like a business. If you have to provide a better service, a better value, a better product to the customer, and the public school system, the brick and mortar system, for example, is not doing that in Alaska, and that's what they ought to be doing. But the teachers union is not concerned about that. They're concerned about losing members, losing money, etc. So what the courts did, Judge Zeman did, as most of your listeners are well aware, he shut down the entire program virtually. Instead of saying, let's look at these half a dozen parents or these half a dozen instances since 2014 that the parents have been sending their kids, let's say, getting courses from religious schools. Once again, it's not the parents' fault. It's the correspondence school's fault, whoever was doing that. And I do an analogy in my article that, so you got somebody that fishing on the Russian River, and they get more fish than they're supposed to, usually 3, let's say, a day or whatever. And you don't shut down the entire fishing on the Russian River because 6 people have violated the law. You take their fishing tackle and you take their licenses and maybe give them restrictions in the future. You don't shut down the entire river. It's unbelievable. But I think the NEA Alaska has opened a Pandora's box, because there's a lot of other stuff going on unconstitutionally that the state of Alaska is paying for. And I put that in my article as well. I put a little chart in there. The Alaska Bible College gets money from the Alaska Performance Scholarship Program, which is a post-secondary scholarship program for kids that want to go to college universities within the state of Alaska. Oh, by the way, a few years ago, I talked to a state legislator staffer. He sent his child outside using that performance scholarship money, and nobody said a word.
Right. Well,
you look on the chart. There's Charter College, Alaska Pacific University, Wayland Baptist, and there's some also like the Beauty School, etc., Northern Industrial Training. They are all getting state of Alaska money, which comes from the same bucket, usually oil money.
Right.
And the other thing I always say is, I guess I can't use my PFD to send my kid to a private or religious school because it's public money. And they don't have an answer for that one, because I think that's a very good analogy.
Right.
But we're going to see what's going to happen. The homeschool parents, they're up in arms, and they have a Facebook page. I don't think you're on it. It's a good Facebook page. Maybe they can invite you, or I can invite you on it.
Sure.
No, there's 1,400 people on it now.
No, I mean, look, this is gonna cause some point, and I think your point here to say, look, this is a problem because post-secondary institutions, because the Constitution says religious or private, right? It's not just religious; it is private, and so you start talking about, the driving academy, the Northern Industrial Training, where they teach them to drive trucks, or the Trendsetters Beauty School, or Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, where they're teaching them about what's the one down in Seward that's the Marine Avtech, the Marine, there's a Marine school down there for teaching you how to be a merchant marine and how to sail, run ships and stuff. I mean, all of those are private institutions that have been receiving money on this. And it's not just the religious. They've tried to frame it as this, ultra religious people just spending money on religious stuff, and it's not. It's on, and in some cases, you may just be buying secular material from non-secular material from secular sources. It's just how it works. The whole thing is in my opinion, a sham. When you look at you mentioned it in passing, but when you look at the people who are being represented in this case by Scott Kendall, of all people, you realize these are all teachers who are working for the system, who are fighting, saying, oh, this is about protectionism. This is about protecting the educational industry and protecting them and keeping their monopoly on that public funds. That's what it's all about in the long run. Quick comment, David, before I go to break, and we'll come back here in just a sec.
No, you're spot on with that. It's all about power and control, and they see their power and control being diminished by parents who are engaged in their child's education, and that's what the case should be about. And I have very little faith in what the Alaska Supremes are going to do. They'll probably just confirm what Judge Zeman said in the lower courts. Hopefully it'll go to the U.S. Supreme Court, which has already decided about 3 cases in homeschool, let's say the homeschool parents' favors.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the Alaska Supreme Court is one of the most political bodies in the state, believe it or not. And I don't see them overturning Zeman on this. It's going to be an interesting discussion. David Boyle is our guest, education advocate. We're talking about his latest article in Must Read Alaska on the NEA lawsuit against homeschooling. We'll continue here in just a moment. The Michael Dukes Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
It's the Michael Dukes Show.
Why not take a quick break?
Be right back. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
All right. David Boyle continues with us as our guest here. Henry says the reason that the education system is failing is because it's designed to fail the children. Every state and federal agency is being weaponized against us, being used to bring in foreign teachers. I mean, I think you're giving people a little bit more credit, Henry, than what they really do. I think it's designed to fill the pockets and bolster the pockets and power of people like the NEA and the education industry and everything else. And it's not surprising. Ron quotes here in the chat room, David, an ex-director of the NEA announced that the NEA expected to accomplish by education what dictators in Europe are trying to do by compulsion and force. This is all about protectionism in the long run, right?
Oh,
David?
Yes. You're there, Michael?
Yeah, I'm sorry. This is all about protectionism, right?
Yeah, it's about protecting their monopoly because they can't provide. It's like the old days of, people remember AT&T's monopoly way back in the up until the early 80s. They couldn't compete, so they ended up in court and they lost. And now we have wonderful, for the most part, telephone service from multiple vendors out there. They can't compete with a private school for education. They can't compete. Oh, by the way, the NEA Alaska president of the NEA Alaska, Tom Claymire, he sent his kids to the most expensive private school in the state, Northern Pacific Academy, because I guess he didn't want to send them to a mediocre Anchorage school district school. That's a question that should be asked of him. His answer is, "Oh, their grandparents paid for it." That's not an answer. But
right.
we shall see.
Right. If you're saying that the school systems are so great and so good, why wouldn't you want to send your kids there, even if the grandparents offered to pay? Why wouldn't you do that if they're so gold-plated and great? Why wouldn't you do that? I mean, that's a perfect example right there.
Well, in what what Senator Tobin tried to do with her bill, Senate Bill 266. She tried to put a lot of restrictions and obstacles on the correspondence programs so that parents would maybe hopefully leave that program and send their kids to the brick and mortar schools. And that's, of course, what the NEA wants. But I got news for them. Watching these people on the homeschool Facebook page, they're not going to leave. They're going to keep their kids, and they'll just independent homeschool them and pay the money right out of their pockets.
Well, that's what happened in Anchorage, right? I mean, they closed down that one charter school, and they expected to capture all of those kids that were in that charter school when they dechartered it. And instead, they had 850 students flow out of the system because most of those parents did not put their kids back into a regular school, right?
Right. That was Family Partnership Charter School. They turned it into a correspondence school, but more than 700 parents or 700 students left that correspondence school, and they went into, a lot of them went into the IDEA correspondence program, and some of them went to the Matsu program. But those parents are engaged, and they know what they want. That's the best education fit for their kids. And boy, they're angry and they're mad now. And hopefully that I can keep stoking that anger or madness over the summer. I hope they don't all go fishing and forget. Like one parent said on one of the posts, she said, when we get, let's see, anyone who thinks we're just going to enroll en masse up the road and hand our kids over to the public school system is delusional. And that pretty much well sums it up.
Yeah.
The other thing about it is, the correspondence program is really cost effective, and it's part of the public school system in Alaska. It's about half of what it costs to send a child to a brick and mortar public school. And I worked on this in a previous article, and I said, if we had to take these correspondent kids and fund every one of them into a brick and mortar school, let's see, it would be. I wrote that.
It's like $200 million, isn't it?
Student cost. It would go up to almost $372 million more.
Right.
For K-12 schools.
And maybe we've hit on something here. Chris in the chat room over on Twitch says it's more than protectionism. The cost of homeschooling Alaska students is a small fraction of the cost of running government schools. This information is dangerous. The only way to get rid of it is to eliminate homeschooling. That's the point. Showing that somebody can do it for less flies directly in the narrative, in the face of their narrative, that they need more money all the time. And so the only way to do it is to eliminate homeschooling, so there is not this example of doing it and doing it better for less.
Yeah. I don't know what else to say. It's just, it's not rational. It's not a rational discussion in the legislature. It was really disgusting, and now the HB 400 was stuffed into House Bill 202, the opioid bill for schools. HB 400 was a very good bill written by Ruffridge and Allard, the co-chairs.
All right,
of
hold on a second, David.
Education.
Hold on a second, David. We're coming back into it. We got to go.
Okay.
The Michael Duke Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Here's Michael Dukes.
We're continuing here. David Boyle is our guest, education advocate and education writer for Must Read Alaska. His latest piece is up at mustreadalaska.com. It's entitled "The Real Reason the NEA Attacked Homeschool Families in Alaska Was Union Power and Control." And you were just talking here, David, about the cost of homeschool. One of the comments in the chat room from Chris and who's watching us on Twitch this morning said that, it's the cost of homeschooling Alaska students is a small fraction of the cost of running government schools, and that information is dangerous. They don't want to see that other places in the state that are not the brick and mortar schools are doing it for less than half. They're getting a better result. They're doing better. That information is dangerous. They want to submarine and torpedo that. They don't want people to know that.
No, you're exactly right. It's about half. A homeschool student costs about the state about half of what it costs to put that child in a brick and mortar neighborhood school. And I'll be honest with you. Let's say the 22,000 plus students went back into the neighborhood brick and mortar schools. $372 million. I don't think the legislature is going to come up with that much money. That's a lot of money. I guess they want to increase the BSA as well. But the union would love that, because now they can hire more teachers. more staff members, and they can have more union dues, and they can use those union dues, which, guess what? They start out being public money because they come out of the salaries of the union members, the teachers, for example, and then they use those dues for political actions to go down and legislate for more money. It's a vicious circle as far as I'm concerned, and it's pretty corrupt.
Right.
They have lobbyists, the Anchorage School District, and I think some other school districts, they hired lobbyists
Right.
to oppose correspondence programs, homeschoolers, and support just the brick and mortar schools. I've done a FOIA request to both the Mat-Su and the Anchorage School District, asking for the amount of dues collected from all the collective bargaining agencies, all the unions in those districts for the last 5 years. And interestingly enough, I got an answer back from the Mat-Su School District. They want me to pay $70 plus to get that information. And I thought, well, wait a minute. All you have to do is look at your books and look at the debit column, because you're all doing the administrative work of withholding that dues money and sending it over to the unions.
Right.
And I think, at least in Anchorage, it is the first month of the school year, you withhold all those monthly dues for the members. And I'm not going to pay the $70 just out of principle. I'm going to change my FOIA request to just do the teachers union instead and see how much that costs me from the Mat-Su.
You also bring up an interesting point in this article, and you talk a little bit about, kind of the, poking the bear, so to speak, that in doing this, I mean, I'll be honest with you, the Scott Kendall and company, and people like Loki Tobin and everything, they were a little shocked at the initial reaction or the initial decision from the judge. I think that they bit off a little bit more than they could chew. They got way more than they anticipated. And you could see the panic in Loki Tobin when she was first talking about it. What are we going to do with all these kids? What do we, if you've just shut down the whole correspondence program, what are you going to do? You just pointed out that it'd be over $350 million if you had to plug all those kids into a regular brick and mortar school. I mean, that's a lot of money. But you also mentioned, again, poking the bear, this really riled up a lot of homeschooling parents with, again, 22,000 kids in schools. There's a lot of parents out there who are taking advantage of this. And yet her bill to try and, quote unquote, fix this problem, SB 26, had a lot more mandates on parents. There was talk about whether or not parents would have to get some kind of education certificate, whether they'd have to be real teachers, whether the parents would have to be tested. I mean, it was just more government intervention into your private lives if you're trying to teach your kids, let alone talking about mandating the test and everything. People are not really happy with that kind of intervention in their lives.
No, you're exactly right, particularly when they have the freedom of choice to educate their child as they see fit, and they get a paltry sum of, let's say, $2,700 a year to do that. Senator Loki Tobin is my state senator, by the way, and my rep, unfortunately, is Cliff Grow. But I had a little bit of conversation with her, reference Bob Griffin's takedown. But so I read all the testimony. I didn't figure out the percentages exactly, but I read all the written testimony that was sent on Senate Bill 266, and well over 95% of it was against the bill. She did not, and we're talking hundreds, she did not realize the bear that she had poked, and she kind of had to eat crow, let's say, when House Bill 400 came to the floor to be stuffed into House Bill 202 for final passage. House Bill 400 was a good bill for correspondence students. She stood up and says, "I'll vote. I cautiously support this bill," and she was humiliated as far as I'm concerned, which I'm sorry she should have been. And of course it was unanimous on the Senate and the House. The 400 House Bill 400 being passed. Right. For the correspondence students. Like I said, it's a very good bill. But in her bill, Senate Bill 266, she had all kinds of restrictions on the correspondence program than even the brick and mortar neighborhood schools had. It was unbelievable. It was like the NEA Alaska had written the bill and she just put her name on it. So the homeschool students had to do mandated state testing was one of the restrictions, which, as you know, the brick and mortar students, they could opt out of. She didn't even have that option for the homeschoolers. And then she wanted to limit the amount of money that they could spend on PE, music, and arts. It was like to 15% of the allotment. Well, you don't do that in the public school system. No. They send their people down to the Performing Arts Center in Anchorage to see plays, and she wasn't going to allow that for the homeschoolers. Right. So, and the other big thing was, which was very important for the homeschool parents, every year, if they have leftover money in their allotment, let's say it's $3,000, they can roll that excess over to the next school year. And as the child progresses through this educational system, the costs become higher as they get into, let's say, high school from elementary.
Right.
So they're allowed to roll that balance over to the next school year. She didn't allow all of that to be rolled over. She only allowed 10% of that allotment to be rolled over to the next school year. On the other hand, the brick and mortar neighborhood schools, they could keep all their funding and put it in their unreserved fund balance, like the Anchorage School District had 21% of their operating fund was in their unreserved fund balance.
Yeah.
I think it's $118 million.
David.
So
go ahead. I'm sorry.
So that's what they were doing. They were trying to put these obstacles in there, and they knew this would upset the homeschool parents, and they just might throw up their arms and give up and relegate their kids to mediocre brick and mortar schools. But from what I've been reading from many of those parents on their Facebook page and corresponding with them, they don't want anything to do with that. Matter of fact, they'll suffer a lot to keep their kids and do independent homeschooling.
Yeah.
But we're going to see how all this shakes out.
The only thing I would take issue with is at the end of the article, you talk about, violations of the Constitution, and then you talk about the legislature adjourning with 120 days. And, I hate that if it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander thing. But I agree with you. It's still, the question is what's constitutional and what's not. I think the big one, again, is like the Performance Scholarship Fund and things like that. That's a question that's still not going to be answered by HB 400. And so that's a question that's going to have to be dealt with down the road. I mean, when you've got Charter College or NIT or Embry-Riddle or whatever that can't take funds because they're a private educational institution, and that's unconstitutional, I mean, that's an even bigger problem from there. Final thoughts here, David, before I let you go.
Well, like I said earlier, this is all about power control by the teachers union, because they see the writing on the wall downstream. For example, I think in 2027, the Anchorage School District, which had almost 50,000 students back in 2014, it'll be down to 37,000 students. And when you do that, you lose. Hopefully, you lose teachers, you lose union members, and you lose union dues. This is not just happening in Anchorage; it's happening across the state.
Yeah.
And they see that happening, and they're trying to stop that. And it's not going to work. And I hope the parents are really engaged in their education.
Got to do it. All right, David, thank you. Hold the line for a second. Folks, we're out of time. Hour 2 is dead ahead. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio. Sorry, David. When I say 60 seconds, I literally have 60 seconds to get it done. I agree. I think this is going to be a big battle, and I think that we're going to see this fight continue with these parents, because you're right. There's a big chunk of those parents that I think will be like, no matter how hard it is, there's no way I'm going to send my kids back to the brick and mortar school because of, a variety of reasons, whether it's curriculum, whether it's indoctrination, whether it's just plain cussedness and stubbornness. They're not going to do it. But this affects more than just the homeschooling at this point. And that's going to be a bigger issue that I think, and I'm in agreement with you, I think is going to have to go all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court. And I guess we'll see where that goes from there.
And the other thing, Michael, that nobody's addressing, which I find very interesting, is the fact that the Alaska Constitution only prohibits direct funding of religious and private institutions, not indirect. And it's a very weak Blaine Amendment. And I hope that finally comes into play with the Alaska Supremes. We'll see. We may be surprised by if that does, by their results. Anyway, thank you much, Michael, and keep doing what you're doing.
All right, David. Well, I appreciate you being on board. Appreciate you calling in. Thanks for writing what you write, and thanks for staying on top of this stuff, David. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Michael. Thank you.
All right, thank you. David Boyle, our guest here on the program this morning, getting things ready to rock and roll for hour 2. Phone lines are open. Sorry, let me delete this comment. Okay. People trying to sell me wonder drugs in the chat room. All right. I fixed that. Okay. All right. Let me go back here and see what's going, see what else is happening. Okay. All right. I'm just reading through the commentary section here. Tim dropped me a link on an article, which I can't click through on the Newsminer. And because I'm not a subscriber to the Newsminer, I can't read the article anyway because I refuse to give them any money. The idea that parents are the educator is also, let me see, Kendall here wrote something. The idea that parents are the educator is also threatening. That parent is often not someone who attended teachers' colleges and are able to educate their children. I mean, the idea that some parents would have to go through some kind of certification is definitely troubling. In many programs, like, for example, IDEA has contact teachers that you deal with. If you have an issue or you can't, you as a parent are struggling with some kind of concept that you're trying to teach your children, they have contact teachers there for you to reach out to and work with. The teacher can help the student as well. If the parent can't figure out something, that's what the contact teacher is for. And that contact teacher probably deals with, 300 or 400 kids, 500 kids. And so they're available to help those parents do that. You don't need to have an education degree to make all those things happen. It's pretty amazing that the direction that many of these places and many of these politicians have wanted the whole thing to go. It's definitely a frustration factor, that's for sure. Okay. Sorry. Ron is comparing the costs of schooling, homeschooling versus public schooling and everything else. That he says, look at the internet service in the rural schools. Starlink is much less expensive, but the legislature wants nothing to do with saving money. To understand this, you have to follow the money. Starlink doesn't have the lobbyists that GCI does. Exactly. It's protectionism. I keep going back to that, but that's what it is. It is protectionism. It's just one of those things. All right. The House rep is complaining. Why isn't BYU attacked by the NEA? Asked Kendall. I mean, don't give him any ideas. Parents are the very best teachers. Yes, I would agree. Yes, Harold, I would agree with that. Surprisingly enough. And yeah, I saw the headline, Tim, that it was the new superintendent reflecting on his first year. I just can't see the article, so sorry. I mean, I'll have to go to see if I can track it down later, but I can't see it right now. Missed most of the first hour. Sound like this will be an hour to go back and listen to later, says Debbie. Yep, Debbie. That's why we have the podcast. So you can go back and listen to it at your leisure. And you can even listen. So who was it the other day that said, I always listen to you at like 1.5 speed. Apparently I talk too slow, or he's just trying to get through the show. I don't know what it is, but he likes that. It is, it's good stuff. All right. We're coming up on the second hour of the program this morning, and the phone lines are open. I've got some other things that I want to talk about. What did Willie say? Willie said Bethel graduated 53 seniors, just short of half of the amount that started as freshmen. Every year they lose 10 to 15 kids per high school class. There's over 6,300 people in Bethel. Where are the kids? Well, they probably went out and got jobs in the middle of all that mess. That's probably what happens. All right, we're coming up in hour 2. We're ready to go. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
And good morning, live around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com, where you'll find links to everything, including the social media sites, the audio-only live stream, links to the podcast and more, and broadcasting live around the world at broadcasting live around the state of Alaska, rather, on this, your favorite radio station, and or FM translators. It is hour 2 of the big radio show today, and Fat Ray in YouTube this morning commented, because we simulcast the show on Facebook and YouTube. He commented, "I hope the second hour is cheerier." Apparently, he was a little disappointed in the conversations in hour 1, and he said, "I hope the second hour is a bit cheerier." But it is what it is. We are getting ready to dive into hour 2. It's open line, open forum today. We've been talking about education. We actually just finished up with David Boyle, who called in this morning for us to talk about his latest piece in Must Read Alaska. You should go read that. I've linked it in the chat room if you want to go take a look at it again. It's a great article talking about the lawsuit that has put all this homeschooling in jeopardy. It was a good article, and it was a good interview. You can go back and listen to it on the podcast if you'd like. Before we get into the rest of it for this morning, though, I want to remind you that tomorrow, Thursday, is going to be officially Firearms Thursday, because I am off on Friday. So tomorrow we'll be joined by Jacob Sullum from Reason Magazine. And he's going to talk about this latest article in the New York Times about how looser gun laws are contributing to some of this gun violence. Or is it? ? Jacob Sullum from Reason will be with us, and we'll be talking with him. We'll do some other firearms news and headlines and stories tomorrow. So it should be a fun time. Hour 2, though, will be Jacob Sullum from Reason, and we'll be hanging out with him. But I will be off on this Friday, and on Monday, of course, which is Memorial Day. So it'll be a 4-day weekend for me, and hopefully many of you will go out there for, to get your 4-day weekend on to enjoy the summer. It's really the only way I could take vacation, because otherwise I always take that time off between Christmas and New Year's because nothing's happening anyway. But the only other time I could take vacation is usually trying to sneak in a 3 or 4 day weekend because I just can't. I can't do it. Can't take the time off. So it is what it is. But this Friday and next Monday, I will be off, and you will have alternate programming for the. Yeah, I will not be broadcasting on. Debbie says, "Are you off on Monday too?" Yes, I will not be broadcasting on Memorial Day. Why would you guys want to get up and listen to me at 6:00 in the morning on Memorial? It's a holiday. Sleep in a little bit. Just even if it's just 20 minutes, sleep in a little bit. Enjoy yourselves. Think about the reason for Memorial Day. Think about all those that gave all for us, and just relax a little bit. Take some time. Take some time off. Can't take it off or won't take off. Won't take a vacation or can't take. Well, the problem is if I take vacation, there's nobody to fill in for me because this is my studio. It's a 4x8 little room in my house. And there's a lot of stuff that goes on here. It would take me 2 weeks to train somebody just to run everything that I run while we're doing the show. And ain't nobody got time for that. Ain't nobody got time for that. So there you go. All right. We will and Brian just took my ego down a sec. He says, to be honest with you, Dukes, it's not you. It's the 6:00 club that I get up for. Okay. All right. I'm with you. You're 100% right. It's exactly what it is. It is what it is. Yeah. All right. So hour 2 of the program today. Oh, I forgot about AlaskaRadioAuction.com. Go over to AlaskaRadioAuction.com. The auctions are closing on Friday for a variety of things. We've got boats, we've got side-by-sides, we've got garage flooring where you can have your garage floor epoxied and turn it into a man cave. We've got a motorcycle. There's some boats. There's some overnight stays at the Bear Creek Winery in Homer. There's auto starts. There's all kinds of stuff. That's just on the bid stuff. And then there's a whole bunch of stuff that's buy it now. You don't have to, no fuss, no muss, just bid it. Anyway, just go to AlaskaRadioAuction.com and check it out. Oh, and I should have checked earlier on. We'll talk about this tomorrow, but pistol courses, basic pistol and concealed carry classes from Point Blank Firearm and Self-Defense. If you've been putting that off, you can go get it done for half price right now if there are any left. So go check it out. Go check it out. It'll be fine. All right, so phone lines are open this morning. Any topic is fair game. I've got some good news. We could talk about some what if you want to talk about what if. We could do that as well. There's some other stories out there. I want to talk a little bit about the Long Trail because there was an article that came up in the ADN talking specifically about the Matsu's resistance to the Long Trail. And this is an interesting point, and I guess I've got enough time now to talk about it here before we go any further on it. Now, I don't know what happened last night, but the assembly last night, and I should have checked on this, but I didn't. The Matsu Borough Assembly last night was considering a resolution that would formally oppose federal oversight of more than 500 miles of trail envisioned to stretch between Seward and Fairbanks. They were thinking about opposing it because of what they called overreaching restrictions. Now, I know Kevin McCabe has mentioned this. He mentioned this when he was on the program last week. And several other people have mentioned the potential problems with federal oversight of the so-called Long Trail because it has led to things like motorized restrictions and many other things. There's a 500-foot easement on each side of this trail. And that's a real problem for sure. We're going to talk about that. But let's just talk about it for a minute here. The Long Trail would connect an existing network of paths and trails, such as the Iditarod National Historic Trail, with newly created trails throughout the state. The longest section would run through Matsu, stretching from the Knik River over 100 miles through Denali State Park. Congress in 22 ordered a $1 million study by the BLM. That's currently underway and asking the question of whether the trail should be federally designated as a national scenic trail. If they do that, it gets millions in funding, but it also gets some federal oversight and regulations. The resolution from the assembly states that they are opposed to relinquishing authority over borough-owned and or operated trails and lands and opposed to overreaching restrictions. Now, it was a resolution that they were working on last night. It's non-binding, so I don't know if it was voted up or down, but this is a really problematic thing for many reasons. First of all, there's only 11 nationwide trails, including the Appalachian Trail and the Pacific Crest Trail, that have been designated as national scenic trails since the program's inception in '68. This is all according to Amy Bouchatz over at the ADN. Proponents of the trail say that while becoming an official scenic trail does bring some federal oversight, such as deciding the exact route, it does not take away any local land oversight. Again, you notice that they don't mention anything about the 500 foot on each side. Is it 500 feet in total, Kevin, or is it 500 foot per side? I think it's 1,000 foot easement, isn't it not? 1,000 feet. 1,000 feet. That's like bigger than a football field. Instead, federal officials are required to work with state and local landholders to determine trail use, maintenance rules, including whether motorized vehicles will be permitted. That's one of the big things. What are they going to do with the motorized vehicles, et cetera, et cetera? Here was the thing that caught me. This is just a throwaway sentence at the end of that paragraph. Once created, a local nonprofit organization would manage the trail, they said. I wonder who that local nonprofit would be. I wonder how, and again, remember, this is ongoing monies to the Alaska Trails, a nonprofit that advocates for trails statewide and is spearheading the long trail effort. They've got they actually have they've got a Matsu coordinator named Sam Dingus. I hope I didn't butcher his name, who's quoted in here as saying, I don't really see a downside to the designation. It's a sensible way to be proactive about having something that's planned, broadly recognized, and supported. They have already received $9 million in state funding from the state. Now, initially, the legislators were told that this was going to cost about $14 million. They've already received $9 million, including $3.1 million from this year alone. Just last week, they passed $3.1 million to work on this long trail. How many people are going to be so many things that we could be doing with money like that. There are so many issues that could be solved. And do we need to spend millions of dollars to try and create a trail across a vast area of wilderness that maybe a handful of people are going to use? How many people are going to hike the 500 miles from Seward to Fairbanks? How many people are going to hike through that 100 plus miles of trail through the Matsu itself? They may be on parts of the trail. They may use portions of the trail. But how many trails do we already have? Do we need one that's designated like that and have it cost? I mean, we're already at 9 million, so the estimate of 14 million at the beginning is probably pretty low. But the thing that got me, once created, a local nonprofit would manage the trail. And I think I may have discovered the reason. The Alaska Trails, alaska-trails.org. Alaska-trails.org. They are Alaska Trail Stewards, and they're talking about the Long Trail, and they are a nonprofit that are trying to get this set up, and they'll take in the money and they'll wash that government money and get some of it to the trails in the long run. But does it really become more of a jobs program in the end? Is it really? I mean, that to me was the key sentence in this whole article. Once created, the Long Trail, a local nonprofit organization would manage the trail. And managing the trail costs money. They got to have people go up and down it. They got to have, maintenance. They got to do all those things. They got to pay the people. I mean, how many millions of dollars a year will it take to maintain that trail in state? And there's no surprise that they want a federal designation, because that means federal money to go towards that trail. Is it any surprise? Of all the things we could spend money on, I don't know why I'm shocked, but sometimes I'm just shocked by stuff like this. All right, we got a couple lines on hold, and I want to get to them here, but we are up against a commercial break. So callers, hold the line for just a second. We'll be right to you when we get back. First things first, we take some phone calls. 319-527-3864. 319-527-3864. The Michael Duke Show continues. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Ha, nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay. We're in the break right now. Let's go over to the telephones and figure out who's on the line here, see what they have to say, and we'll get them squared away to return to the radio and talk about stuff. Good morning. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, it's Craig in Fairbanks. Mike, how are you doing?
Hey, doing good, Craig. You want to hold the line for a second, and I'll take your call when we get back to the radio.
Yeah,
so
we're talk about the long trail.
Everybody can hear it and want to talk about the long trail. All right. Hold the line. Craig Campo up in Fairbanks. We'll be talking with him here in just a hot second. Okay. Did you say 500 miles from Fairbanks? It's a 500-mile trail, Rick, that goes from Seward to Fairbanks. It's a connectivity. Let me read it so that I don't screw it up. Formally oppose the oversight of a more than 500 mile trail envisioned to stretch between Seward and Fairbanks. The longest section of the trail would run through the Mat-Su, stretching from the Knik River over 100 miles through Denali National Park. So that's what they're talking about there. I'm just clicking over the Alaska Long Trail, connecting a world-class trail system connecting 500 plus miles of Alaska's iconic terrain and diverse communities from the Pacific into the interior. That's what they're looking for. And they're looking for that National Scenic Trail designation as well. All the way from Seward, all the way to Fairbanks. And then they go on to say the Long Trail, this will be good for the economy. Anyway, it's the cost. It's going to be huge. It's going to be huge. And then of course the maintenance every year. They have to maintain it. They have to keep it going. They have to keep it open. They got to hire people. They got to do all the stuff. Alaska-trails.org if you want to go read about it. And in fact, I'll just drop this link in the chat room so people can go take a look at it for themselves. But yes, 500 miles to Fairbanks. All right. Allegedly 500 feet on either side, zero return on investment. So it's 1,000-foot wide easement. Ugh. The coordinator of the trail spoke last night at the MSB meeting, assembly meeting. Go back and listen, said Tony. I will. I have to go back and listen to this. Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm just scrolling backwards here. Let's hear some good news, my dad says. Let's just hear some good news. The resolution was approved last night, 7-0, said Kevin. Thank you, Kevin. All right. Let me scroll back down here. Lots of illegals will want to use that trail. I mean, they'd have to get to Seward first. I mean, and then they're going to hike to Fairbanks. Probably easier to climb onto a Biden bus and do something like this. My buddy Big John just sent me a text and said there's already a 500-mile trail from Seward to Fairbanks. It's called the Alaska Railroad. True. I mean, that's it right there. Michael, you really should take a note from Robin Hood Men in Tights on how to deliver bad news in a good way. Well, that's what you want to do. Okay. So there you go. Everybody's giving me a hard time this morning. What's going on? All right. How about we upgrade the Telegraph Trail? They'll have to build fancy bridges over the big come on. I didn't want to delete the comment. I wanted to post it up. They'll have to build big fancy bridges over the big producing salmon spawning streams, it sounds like. Yeah. And one woman spoke last night concerned about the resources that will be spent on emergency services when they're not prepared for our ever-changing weather. I mean,
Public enema number one. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number one, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
Oh, welcome back. That interrupted me so rudely. We're ready to get back into this here. We're taking some phone calls. Craig is up in Fairbanks. He wanted to talk about the long trail. Let's get his hot take on this as well. See what he has to say. Good morning, Craig. What's on your mind?
Hey, good morning, Mike. I think it's a wonderful idea. And, we could have this 500-mile trail for all these. I don't know what the average age of the person getting off a ship in Seward is, probably 72. They could hike all the way to Fairbanks to see our $33 million Taj Mahal animal shelter.
Absolutely.
It'd be a tourist attraction. Think of all those people that are going to walk 500 miles. So, I mean, while we're wasting money, let's just really go overboard here.
Well, and they could, while they're there.
This is one of the most ridiculous ideas.
Yeah, while they're there, they can adopt a dog
I've
and then walk it back to Seward, right? I mean, that's the whole point. So, I mean, why not?
Sure. Now we're going to have to spend money for puppy, places where puppies can take a dump and everything else. But listen, here's the deal. We've talked, and our Laundry House gang has talked about this ever since they started. We've been opposed to it. We've been asking the governor to veto as much of it as he can. It was sold as a multi-use trail project. But when you look at two things, you look at the 85% of the trails will be non-motorized, number one, and number two, they just haven't got any maintenance plan. They really don't. They're not facing the costs. And one of the main organizers for state parks has said publicly he envisions these big new hotels being built like in Nenana to house all these hikers. Well, do the math. The average hiker that's going to use this trail is wearing Birkenstocks, got an REI backpack, and they're not going to spend money. They're going to hang out in a tent. And it's just ridiculous. And we've got such better things to spend money on. And I'm glad to see Matt Sue's got the kahunas to fight it. Most of Fairbanks is against it. So we just got to keep up the fight and keep pushing back on this.
Yeah. Well, and you look at the organization that's pushing this, Alaska's Trails, they're a nonprofit. And it says right here in the article, when the whole thing's said and done, they're going to choose a nonprofit to get up and run it. Well, which nonprofit do you think is going to be up for that when they start running it? Do you think it's going to be the one that's been pushing on it and been part of it this whole time? They've already received $9 million, Craig.
Yeah, well, I understand that. And here's the other thing. If you look at that trail committee that's in charge of it, look at what it's made up of. There's like 14 or 15 groups, and it's the typical backpacking eco-Nazis, we call that are out there that are just, they don't have any, they just have this imagination that just thinks, oh, it's going to be beautiful. But we don't have the population base. We don't have the age demographics. We don't have the ability to do this. It is a total waste of money, and I hope people get out and fight it because, like I said, there's a lot better stuff to spend money on.
Yeah. No, I totally agree, Craig. I agree. And again, the fact that much of this is going to be non-motorized over a trail that's 500 miles long in Alaska makes no sense. And the potential, as Kevin McCabe pointed out in the chat room, of having a 500-foot easement on both sides of this trail that bisects the entire from the interior down to Seward. How are you supposed to get across? How are you supposed to be able to explore both sides? You know, if you're driving, even if you're not using it, you won't even be able to cross it at some point.
Well, and the other thing they don't mention is once this trail is built, we're going to hand the keys of it over to BLM to manage it. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Haven't we given enough away of our rights and our land in this state? We got to give more to the federal government to tell us, you know, we can't poop off the side of a trail or we can't, you know, we gotta, and again, the cost, all the, you know, the bathroom facilities, the emergency services, everything, you know, these people are they all going to be armed? There's a lot of bears between Seward and Fairbanks. Who's going to take care of all that? I'm sure the state will get sued because they didn't provide enforcement for Granny that, you know, is walking up the trail or some long hair.
Right.
Why don't we just divert a trail? Let's have a trail divert off so we can go look at the failed barley project in Delta and some of these other things we've blown money on over the years, right?
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. All right, Craig. Well, hey, I appreciate you coming on board and giving us your thoughts on this. I couldn't agree with you more. I appreciate you being part of it today.
Have a good one, Mike.
That's Craig up in Fairbanks here giving us his thoughts on it this morning. So I just pulled the tax records for this Alaska Trails. They were kind enough to put their Form 990s up on their website there. So for last year, 2023, they had a total revenue for this nonprofit of $1.25 million. 900,000 of that came from government, from state government. And they got another 982,000 was from government grants. Another 250,000 were from other contributions, gifts, grants, whatever. So that's, you know, I'm assuming that's from other nonprofits or from private contributors. $1.25 million. Okay, so where'd the money go? Well, about $620,000 of that went to salaries, wages, benefits, payroll taxes. 630,000 of that went to pay people's salary. That's what this is about. That's what this is about in the long run. And the worst part was, let me scroll backwards here in this big freaking form. Last year, their total expenses were $890,000. This year, their total expenses, $1.24 million. So it's just going to go up every year. This is just last year's. I haven't gone back. They've got 5 years worth of 990s listed up on their website. But you can just go back there and look at it. Over half the money they're taking in, and they're just trying to get the trail set up now. $630,000 in salaries. So over half of it going to salaries right out of the gate. It's madness. It's just madness at this point. I could just think of so many other things we should be spending money on. So many other things. Well, or saving money in total. They've already given them $9 million at the state level. I don't know how many employees there are on that. You can go to I've already posted the link up on the chat room. Somebody just said, post the link. I've posted the link like 3 times already for these guys. You can go take a look at it, and it's in there about section. You can go see it. Go take a look at it. Alaska-trails.org is where you go. Let's go back over to the phones and see what you have to say. I see Randy's on the line from Fairbanks. Randy, what's on your mind, my friend? What are your thoughts?
Well, Michael, this is not on the long trail. It's a different subject, if I may. It's a technical radio question that you may or may not know about, and I wanted to ask you if you did know about it. Basically, what it is, here in Fairbanks, there's a low power station, and I won't mention their frequency or mention their name, but it's a very left wing station. They only broadcast with 300 watts, and I enjoy listening to it. I switch back and forth from conservative talk radio when I'm driving around in my car, and then I switch to this left wing, very left wing radio station. You know, I don't agree with anything they say hardly, but sometimes I do a little bit. But it's very interesting. It's very interesting for me to listen to. Anyway, about 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago or so, I started noticing interference coming onto this. It's on the FM band, and it's coming onto this station. And sure enough, I moved one notch over, and as an example, I'm going to use frequencies that are off the scale. Like the highest frequency for FM on my radio is 107.9. So I'm going to talk about 108. Those are fictitious numbers, but just as an example. So the left wing station I listen to all the time, I'll say, is 108.9. But this new station that is bleeding over into it and interfering with my listening pleasure is at 108.7. And I recently finally went and talked to somebody in the left wing station. They have a little office here in Fairbanks. And I asked them about this. Who is that bleeding over into your station? And they said it's a 10,000. The guy that I was talking to said he thought it was a 10,000 watt station. And he said where it might be broadcasting from. And they take a feed from a religious station that's in the South Central area, because on this bleeding over station, they mention the frequency and the name of the South Central station, and every now and then they'll mention the actual frequency that they're broadcasting here in Fairbanks and the name of that station, which I won't mention. But my thought is, how come this religious station can't move to 108.5? There's nobody there, and they'd be two notches over instead of right next door. What do you think about all that?
Well, I mean, first of all, that's Wrigley. That's not up to the broadcaster per se. I mean, they can ask for a specific frequency, but that really is at the whim of the FCC. And when you submit an application to the FCC for all those kind of things, you have to do a site survey and do a study to show where your broadcast circle is and what your footprint looks like, and do all that kind of stuff. That's all up to the FCC at that point, whether to approve or to authorize that or not. And low power stations have they have a lower priority, I think, in the FCC's hierarchy of who's deciding which signal reigns supreme there. And you're going to see that. You're going to see a station that's got 5,000 or 10,000 watts of power override a station that's broadcasting at 100, 200, 300 watts. That's just going to happen. But ultimately, that decision on where the frequency is, you can ask for it, but it's up for the FCC to decide whether or not to give you that frequency or to license you to that frequency as it is.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. I've yet to call this religious station. I think I can find them, I guess, and you can call them up if I find the number on the internet somehow. But I want to ask them about that. How come you chose right there next door to this left wing station? Anyway, well, thank you for that, and I just thought I'd ask you about that. Thanks.
Okay, well, I appreciate it, Randy. Thank you for your call. I mean, probably part of the reason is they were choosing that frequency. I think they would probably choose that frequency to make sure that they're not interfering with the other nonprofit or commercial stations who are around them. Like I said, the LP station takes lowest priority because it's a much smaller thing. Their broadcast footprint should be very small compared to a station that's licensed for a regular or high power station. That their footprint's very small. So the licensee who is at the higher or at the higher power has more people to deal with, has more other stations to try to not interfere with. So that's probably why they chose. It. So there you go. Trying to answer the questions to the best of my ability. Not a professional engineer or an operator who has had to deal with that directly, but tangentially, I have seen some of that stuff. All right, one more call here before we go to break. Let's go over here. Good morning. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
That's Bob down in Seward.
Hey, Bob, what's on your mind?
Well, the Forest Service has been doing a bunch of work on this end of the trail as part of the Iditarod, which would be all part of the long trail. I think they have 1,000-foot corridor through from Nash Road out to Moose Pass. They put a bridge across Falls Creek, spent a bunch of money on that. But they've dropped off Resurrection River Trail. They don't maintain it at all from Martin Creek on, so it's basically a ghost trail now. So it's like, yeah, they spent a lot of money, but it all just goes away. I mean, and another boondoggle project down here was Save the Jesse Lee. You still there?
I'm still here. Save the Jesse Lee.
Yeah, and they spent millions trying to save the Jesse Lee, and they disposed of it. It's gone. So locals got big money jobs, traveled all over the country, spent all the money, and politicking for it, and it got tore down.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is part of the problem, Bob, right? I mean, like I'm saying, this organization that's pushing for these trails, it took in last year $1.2 million. $1 million of it was government funds, and they expended, they consumed, over half of it in salaries and benefits and taxes and everything. So, I mean, this really is nothing more than a jobs program for these people who are passionate about a certain thing. I admire their passion, don't get me wrong, but is it government's job for them to create something that pays their salary moving forward? I mean, what is that? 2 or 3 people, 3-4 people maybe that they've got on a payroll? What happens when the trail really gets going? What happens when everything gets approved and everything's going on? What's the cost of the trail? Is it $1 million a year? Is it $2 million a year? They're saying that the original cost is $14 million. We're $9 million into it right now. How much more do we have to spend?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, it's the same thing with the Jesse Lee thing down here. I mean, they spent millions of dollars trying to preserve a building that had been condemned since the earthquake, and then it cost the city, because they wound up with it in a tax foreclosure, I believe. Yeah, and then the city had to spend millions of dollars to get rid of all the asbestos to tear the building down.
Yeah, no, it's
just a vacant lot now. Yeah, it's right in the middle of town.
It's a hot mess, man. It's a hot mess. All right, Bob. Well, hey, thank you for your call. I appreciate you sounding off here this morning. I got to run. We got more coming up. The Michael Duke Show continues. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. One final segment ahead. I got a couple more lines on hold, so we'll be back to them here in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. We'll continue right after this.
What is that?
Common sense. Regularly heard on American radio. Michael Duke Show. Radio.
Okay, let's go over to the phones real quick, and we'll get this caller's name so we can get him set up for the return to radio before I go check out the comments here. Good morning. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, you hear me?
I can hear you.
All righty. This is Steve. I'm in the interior, and I'll be cut off here shortly. Phone service is third world. But just investigate these nonprofits. They're full of nothing but ex-government people that know how to fill out the paperwork, and they got friends processing it.
You think that this is all just a scam at this point, just a play?
It's a money-making deal for them. It's they're retired or they're out of their government job and they're looking for a paycheck. I've seen it out here. The Kobe Farm community, borough assembly member helped form it. He could vote on it. And then as soon as he got it in, he's 70-some years old, paying himself $45 to run a chainsaw. Hey, it's a scam.
All right, Steve.
And it gives legitimate nonprofits a bad name.
Right. Well, and that you're right with that, especially if there's nonprofits out there trying to do something. But I mean, I'd be interested to know how many employees we got here. They've only got 4 people listed on the board of this trails thing on the website. So are they all taking a paycheck, or just 2 or 3 of them? I mean, how many?
Well,
$630,000.
Paycheck, and they know how to play the game. Those names up there won't be the driving force behind it because they'll be clean.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you.
You just check it out. Check it out. It's a scam with ex-government people getting a paycheck.
All right, Steve. Thank you for calling in. I appreciate you giving us your thoughts today.
You bet.
Appreciate it. Yeah. I mean, again, you can go pull the 990s yourself and take a look at this. But it's crazy. Let's see. I love hiking, but even I think this is a waste of money. There are lots of trails. Alyeska already built a nice long trail available to anybody who wants to take it. It gets regular helicopter flyovers for security reasons. So if you get injured or whatever, you can get help. We don't need to spend all this money and then turn it over to the inept federal government. Yeah, you think? But again, it's what gets me. Let me go back over to this again, this trails form. How much time I got here? I got 3 minutes. Let me pop that up there. Yeah, it doesn't give you the breakdown of who gets paid what, but you can look at this thing and you can see right here. Let me get to the page that we're going on here. Let me share this with you guys here. Right here. Oh, look at that. It already found it right there. Look right there in the center. So you've got $555,116 for salaries and wages, another nearly $30,000 in benefits, plus another $61,000 in payroll taxes. Then they've got management expenses over here of $20,000 for management and general expenses, and another $5,000 in employee benefits for the management as well on top of that. And then, of course, the program expenses for the program itself. They spent another $500,000 on that. But these 3 items right here, $630,000 of their total income for $1.25 million for their grants, contributions, and up from $930,000 the year before. Up from $930,000 the year before. Up almost $250,000 from one year to the next. So, I mean, salaries and compensations. The current year, oh, here we go. Here's all of it combined. I missed this column right here. Here's all of it combined. $735,075 in salaries, other compensation, and employee benefits. $735,000. This is just 2023. That's up from $591,000 the year before. So, wow. Anyway, you can go check out all the that's just 2023. You can go back and check out all the 990s for the whole year over there on top of it. Oh, man. All right. We are going to continue here. One final segment of the show. Whatever you want to talk about. I got some good news. I guess we'll do some good news stories here. Because why not? Whoa. Joel Osteen, Alaska Trails, same energy. Ow. Hashtag too soon. Hashtag too soon. All right, let's go. Here we go. Jumping back into it. Okay, I was just going over that 990, and I just discovered that there was a column on the front page. I didn't realize it that actually covered wasn't 630,000. Wasn't 630. Over $730,000 in salaries and benefits last year, up from 500 and something thousand the year before. I mean, it's a jobs program for somebody. It's a jobs program for somebody. But my dad has been asking me to do some good news. I think Dad's a little. I think Dad's a little wore out on the angsty stuff. So let's get into some good news, shall we? Let's do this. I think this is some. We need some of that sometimes. Let's get some of that good news energy going on. So, from our friends at the Good News Network, let me hit you with a couple of these. A Cleveland man is being hailed as a hero for his determination to rescue an infant trapped in a burning house. John Stikovich was on his way to work when the 62-year-old saw a house consumed in fire and smoke, but no fire engines had arrived yet. In front of the house, Stikovich saw who he assumed was the occupant looking on despondently. He said, "The mother was sitting on the lawn with her one baby, and I asked her if she was all right, and she said, 'My baby's still in the house.' And I was thinking to myself, oh my God, I have to save the baby." That's how it was going to be. Circling the house, he tried to go in through the side door, but kicking it in, he found the smoke and fire was too much. At the back of the house, another door was already open. Stikovich crawled in to search for the baby before being driven back out empty-handed. He asked the mother where she last saw her child, to which she replied that it was next to the baby gate. So once more, he plunged into the inferno. Stikovich sought in vain, with time and oxygen running short. Contemplating what to do, he thought of saving himself, but the hero to be squashed it after hearing the infant making a sound. Throwing himself in the sound's direction, his arm caught hold of the baby's leg before the man was able to retreat with all the strength he had left. The fire had been so severe that two firefighters arriving after Stikovich completed the rescue mission were injured trying to control the blaze. The department said Stikovich's actions were without a doubt the reason that the baby survived. Treated for smoke inhalation at the hospital, he was able to go home the same day. And according to WJW Cleveland, it's believed that the city is poised to honor this man for his bravery. He said, "I feel wonderful that I could save the baby. That mother doesn't have to mourn her baby. The baby gets to live today. Everybody is just calling and saying how great a job it was. But I mean, I would do it for anybody. It doesn't matter. And I would hope that somebody would do it for me." So hats off to John Stikovich for jumping in and doing what it took and not giving up. And again, a baby will now live a full life because of it. From Canada's province of Manitoba comes a story on how dozens of volunteers succeeded when presented with a mammoth logistical challenge. What was that challenge? Giving away 12 million pounds of potatoes. Taters, precious, taters. There was a bumper crop. And that's, there are bumper crops, and then there's whatever happened at Isaiah Hoffer's Manitoba farm last year. Potatoes were coming out of the ground in such numbers that after fulfilling all of his normal deliveries and quota, he still had 10 million pounds of potato left. I mean, that's just 10 million. I mean, what do potatoes come in? 5-pound bags, 10-pound bags? Just do the math on how many bags that is. He said people that have been in the industry for the last 40 years, they'd never seen anything like this. We had at least 100,000 bags of surplus potatoes. In potato language, a bag is 100 pounds. So 100,000 bags of surplus potatoes. He had a few options. He could leave them in to rot as fertilizer. He could turn them into animal feed or sell them at a tiny profit or even a loss in such a flush market because everybody was doing good with taters last year. In the end, he followed his heart and resolved to give them all away to the people who were in need. In his email box, he saw a letter from the industry group Keystone Potato Producers, which happened to be spotlighting the work of the U.S. food charity outfit called FarmLink Project. FarmLink came from the government-enforced business closures and supply chain disruptions during the pandemic and was responsible for connecting farms with surplus food with food banks cut off from the usual deliveries. Since 2020, they had rescued about 100 million pounds of food from going to waste on farms and distributing it in food banks across North America. God, thank you, U.S. government, for shutting all that stuff down. Contacting some other farmers he knew, he was soon able to offer FarmLink 12 million pounds of potatoes for donation. Teaming up, Hoffner and the Kate Nelson, the chief marketing officer and co-founder of FarmLink, began to strategize about how to get rid of the spare spuds. And they started off with food sharing in Ottawa. They took a lot for this. Hoffner and Nelson, who were looking at a Canadian $30,000 Canadian cost for their donation, were able to rely on some contacts who provided packaging and transportation. Their efforts paid off, and they saw 115 trucks depart the farm carrying the spuds to food banks and charities as far south as San Diego, California. So 10 million pounds of spuds going out because a guy was just like, let's get him out there to people who need him. Pretty amazing stuff. Pretty good stuff. All right. I actually got a call. Let's take this call. We'll take this call here. One final call before the end of the show today. We only got about 2 minutes. Good morning, Bill. What's on your mind?
Well, an example of how the federal government treats the airspace here. That's for military training. U.S. Air Force pilots.
Right.
Okay. This area keeps getting expanded over the years. I lived in Alaska for 40 years, and so I know that it's happened more than once that the Air Force has requested expansion of their area, and they still can't stay in it. I live about 5 miles from the Tanana River along the Parks Highway, and I had F-35s flying right over my rooftop. I heard the racket. I went outside, and pretty soon I spotted them because the air was clear. And sure enough, that there are two of them flying probably somewhere between 5,000 and 10,000 feet. Certainly low enough that you can definitely identify them as F-35s. And of course, F-35s are so loud and have such a rasping signature to their sound, you can't possibly mistake it. You can hear them from 5 miles away if there's not enough ambient noise to block them out. So that's what you get. In good faith, I suppose you could say that the state of Alaska says, "Oh yeah, expand your area here." And, people like Murkowski, of course, are right behind that because she was the hero that got the F-35s here.
Right, right. So you're saying you just don't, you're unhappy with the noise and the expansion. That sounds like a whole nother show, Bill. I appreciate you calling in, though. We are out of time. Tomorrow, Thursday, Jacob Sullum, Reason Magazine, The Michael Duke Show. Okay. Thank you, Bill, for your call. I appreciate it. But we were up against the top of the hour break. We had to get through that. Let me just go through the comments real quick to see. What do you mean? I enjoy Michael's trolling. Manages to fit all the good news into the last 10 minutes. I'm trying to end on a positive note. What do you want? All right. Finally, some actually good news. John Stikovich is a true U.S. hero. I agree. There are good people out there. There are good people out there. Terry says, I wish you would run for office again. We need your common sense. I would be in jail, Terry. It would not be good for anybody. That'd be good for anybody. Jason says he loves the F-35s flying over his house. I mean, what does that sound? The sound of freedom. That's what that is. All right, we got, it is what it is. It is what it is, All right. Well, we're out of time. I gotta go. Wait, there's another phone call? I can't do it. I'm out of time. So we'll fly out of here. Thank you for coming on board today, my friends. It's good to hear you. Good to talk with you. We will see you tomorrow again with Jacob Sullum from Reason Magazine for a little bit of Firearms Thursday action. There you go. Read the bios on the trail site, said Kevin. Oh, I did. Like I said, we could get into that. That's a whole show right there. I guarantee it. All right, folks, we got to go for real this time. I had to restart the music. I got talking so long. We'll be back with more tomorrow. Have a great day. Thanks for coming in.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.